Good evening, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World Talks. Ukraine evacuates more civilians from the Donetsk region as Russia's offensive unfolds around Pokrovsk. But what can Kyiv do to halt the Russian progress? Well, to talk about it, we're joined by Michael MacKay, an independent analyst. Good evening.
Good evening.
So how would you describe the current frontline situation from Ukraine's perspective?
I would say that the front line is, from Ukraine's perspective, I would call it stable, given that Russia is carrying out an all-out summer offensive. Yes, Pokrovsk, for example, in Donetsk region is under threat, but it has been under threat with similar front lines for about a year now. So we see Russia is pressing not just there, but on every part of the front, from the north in Sumy region all the way down to Kherson in the south. So from Ukraine's perspective, I would describe the battlefield as controlled, but that the Russians are very slowly making gains in many sectors.
Now, what do these Russian attacks look like? Well, I'm just wondering whether Russia can still afford, to use soldiers as cannon fodder, which we very much observed in the early days of this conflict. Now, is it still the same, or have Russians changed their tactics?
It's still largely the same. There have been some changes in tactics. Ukraine is able to inflict anywhere between 1,000 and 1,200 casualties on average each day to the Russians. So these are enemy soldiers who are killed or wounded or missing so that they can no longer participate in combat. However, the Russians are able to replace the soldiers at a slightly higher rate than that. Now, these are very poor quality troops, poorly equipped, poorly trained, but the numbers game is slightly in Russia's favor in terms of replacements over casualties. And we see that the toleration of the Russians for casualties amongst their own people is unlimited. They still are carrying out these meat wave assaults, but now they're generally using small group tactics rather than mass tactics. They're trying to get through with motorcycles and buggies, for example, as well as on foot. And they're also taking advantage of the fact that they have a substantial artillery advantage. North Korea supplies more artillery shells to Russia than all of the West combined supplies to Ukraine. And then there's, of course, Russia's own production. So what the Russians do, and this is a change from, say, a year ago with these meat wave assaults, is they completely obliterate every standing structure on the line of contact and with artillery, and then move in with these meat wave assaults in small groups. And even with 50% and higher casualties on each one of them, the survivors stay and hold, and the Ukrainians are forced to give ground. The Ukrainian counterattack is overwhelmingly with drones, and they are able to hit the Russians in depth up to 20 kilometers back from the front line to destroy supply lines and inflict tremendous casualties. So I think the battle is similar to, for example, a year ago at Bakhmut, but these mass infantry assaults are in small groups, and they're preceded with these artillery barrages that are reminiscent of what the Red Army did in World War II.
But isn't there a threat that, well, more than 100,000 soldiers were amassed near Pokrovsk, that's according to Ukraine's military. Isn't there a threat that they may actually breach, the front line? You said that it looks quite stable, but then again, given Ukraine's problems with military personnel, well, they basically lack soldiers, right? Isn't there a threat that if Russians breach, the very first line of defense, there's no one else to stall that progress?
Yes, ordinarily, I would say that is true. Ukraine does not have enough soldiers, even for this defense. However, the battlefield has changed, and what we see is this dynamic defense from the Ukrainians that it's not actually a front line being breached. It's a line of control where there are no soldiers that come to be occupied by Russian soldiers, and the Ukrainians are not even in rifle range in all of these battles. So it's a positional battle and is overwhelmingly determined by drone warfare. Um, so when Ukrainians do give ground, 100 meters, 200 meters, a city block at a time, um, there's no breakthrough because there were no forward positions of Ukrainian soldiers being lost. There was just controlled territory or uncontrolled territory becoming controlled by the Russian invaders. So I think there's a reason why the line looks stable and why I don't foresee a breakthrough. I just see a continuation of this erosion of the line and back, 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 but never a breakthrough. I don't foresee that.
Hmm. Well, it's the fourth year of the war already. How is the Western supplied equipment coping with Russia's, well, superior numbers for starters, and with their own war machinery?
Very poorly, I would say. Um, I think that no Western country other than Ukraine has matched the war production status of Russia and North Korea, which support the attack. And given the economic resources of the West, which far surpass that of Russia and North Korea, this is an astonishing condition. It's not that we don't know that this wartime production capacity is needed, and yet no country other than Ukraine has made the decision to do that. Countries have done, especially in Eastern Europe, have done much better than was to be expected if we compare it to a peacetime scenario. But they're still doing less than what is needed given that we're in a state of war.
On Thursday, the US president announced the sales of, let me see, Hawk Phase 3 air defense systems and some spare parts for Bradley armored vehicles. Now, we know that Patriot batteries are, well, they're not effective against these mass Russian drone attacks against Ukrainian cities. Well, simply because they are way too expensive, right, to launch a Patriot missile to down a single drone. Now, can Hawk systems help the situation?
They can help in a very small way, but I think what these military planners are missing is that these are, as you observe, very expensive systems to shoot down relatively inexpensive Shahed strike UAVs. So spending $1 million to shoot down a $4,000 missile just does a drone, I should say, just doesn't make sense from an economic point of view. If we were looking at what would be militarily effective and what would be the best bang for your buck, as the American expression has it, would be to use these expensive systems to destroy the launch platforms in the Russian Federation. These are the multi-million-dollar facilities where these are launched. So to stop the attacks in the first place. A colloquial saying is shoot the archer, not the arrow. And if the United States, for example, were to supply Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukrainian defenders, and it'd be a straightforward matter to overcome the technical difficulties of how would they be launched from ground launchers or from air or whatever. But then these sites in the Russian Federation where these attacks originated could be destroyed, and this would be far more effective in providing air defense to Ukraine rather than waiting for these missiles and drones and guided bombs, which pretty much can't be stopped, to be in the air and then try to shoot them down with these very expensive systems.
I see. Well, for example, Germans are quite reluctant to send their Taurus missiles to Ukraine, but then on the other hand, they want to produce some long-range weaponry in Ukraine with the help of Ukrainian experts. Now, the question here is whether Ukraine can, come up with their own long-range missiles and not rely on the Western partners.
Yes, because Western partners are so unreliable, Ukraine has come up with some excellent solutions. So, for example, the Neptune began a life as an anti-ship cruise missile. And at the start of the large-scale offensive in 2022, it had a range of about 300 kilometers. And now there is a long-range variant of it that can hit targets up to 1,000 kilometers away. And this is entirely Ukrainian designed and produced. And Ukrainians also have long-range drones as well as ingenious ways of delivering short-range ones as well. So this is what is necessary. So given this unreliability, untrustworthiness of Western allies, the best thing for them to do is to do things like these partnerships and simply fund these Ukrainian enterprises that do what is necessary and produce these long-range strike weapons.
And lastly, in a few words, as we're running out of time, what do you think will happen after Donald Trump's 50-day ultimatum to work out a peace agreement?
I think he'll give another delay and another excuse. So I'm very pessimistic. And this is nothing but a license for Russians to kill Ukrainian civilians. So I see nothing but a further extension of this green light given by Trump to the Russians.
Not very optimistic indeed. Michael MacKay, an independent analyst, was our guest this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching and stay with us for much more here on TVP World.